Manuel's going to be over you for that reason.
All right, so look, everybody look. The way it's going to work is after the SAQ, you'll write the DBQ, okay? It'll be the very next thing on the test. So let me go find this test. Here's how it's going to be set up. You're done with the SAQ. Now you get a break, and then you have 1 hour and 40 minutes to write 2 essays. Okay, one will be the DBQ and one will be the LEQ. The DBQ will have documents. That's the first one you're going to do. We're not going to talk about that one right now because the LEQ is the easiest one to go over, and there are a lot of common traits in the rubric for both of them. Okay, and you're going to do the same exact thing in both of them. The only difference is with the DBQ, you're going to add some documents, and we'll talk about that later. But for right now, let's just focus on the LEQ. That's the long essay. So I'm going to skip down. Now look, this hour and 40 minutes, that means you have 1 hour and 40 minutes to write both essays. There's not going to be a break. They're not going to say, okay, you should be done with the DBQ, now move on to the LEQ. They might tell you that this is the suggested time for you to be finishing up the DBQ and moving on to the LEQ, but that doesn't mean you have to, okay? There are some kids who have gone on this test and they really focused on the DBQ, and it took them 1 hour and 10 minutes to write it. And then they went to the LEQ and they just did the best they could. But they knew the DBQ better than they knew the LEQ. So they focused on it, made sure they had a really good essay for the DBQ. You manage your time however you feel like you need to manage your time. But you've got a total of 1 hour and 40 minutes. The suggested time is 1 hour for the document-based question, 15 minutes to read, 45 minutes to write, and then 40 minutes for the long essay where you have no documents. All right? So, the long essay, let's look at it. Here's how it's going to be set up. You will have an option. You will have 3 options. They're going to give you 3 questions that you get to pick from. It'll say question 2, 3, or 4. All right, suggested writing time 40 minutes. So you're going to answer one of those. They're going to cover different time periods. This one, number 2, is going to cover early American history. This will be somewhere in the middle, and this will be from like 1898 to present day. All right? It's very likely that you're probably going to end up doing number 4 because you're going to be more comfortable with that content. But don't skip over the other 2. Read them because it may be something that's real easy to write about. It may be something that you remember vividly, okay? And go, again, it's important that you go back through your content, read through your content, make sure you know you're comfortable with the content. So that way, if they do, what I've found is that oftentimes some of the first 2 questions are usually easier to answer because they know that it's been a while since you've had that content, so they kind of make the questions easier. But most kids skip over them because they're not familiar with the content. They haven't had it so long. So my advice to you would be to make sure you study the content from those early periods, and then if they give you an easy question, you'll be able to answer it. Like this one, this is from 2021. Evaluate the extent to which transatlantic voyages from the period 1491 to 1607 affected the Americas. That would be an easy essay to write.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Columbian Exchange, okay? And you're going to talk about how Europe affected America and how America affected Europe from those Atlantic voyages. I mean, that's a really easy.
Yeah,
exactly. Sure. So that's what I'm saying. You've got to make sure you read the questions first. A lot of kids didn't do that one because they weren't comfortable with the content. If you just study the content, that's an easy question to me for you to write. Most kids are going to do number 4, okay? They're going to answer number 4. But you've got 3 options, so don't forget that, okay? You don't have to answer all 3. If you try to write 4 essays in 1 hour and 40 minutes, you're not going to make a good score. Everybody understand? So pick the one that you're most comfortable with. Now, as far as the skill, it's going to be the same skill. They're probably going to even talk about the same type of stuff, like foreign policy or economics, whatever.
Wait, so there's going to be one question that we have to answer?
One of these questions, okay, you got to do the DBQ. There is no other option for that one.
Okay.
There's just a DBQ, and then you've got 2, 3, and 4. You pick one of those,
Yep.
and that's it. Okay? Everybody got it? Okay. So let's look at the rubric. I've given you all a copy of this. We've looked at this document a million times. Let's go through it very quickly. Remember how we want to set up our essay. Everybody focus with me. Put your phones away. Put your phones away. All right, first paragraph. First paragraph. You're going to give contextualization and your thesis. All right? So, contextualization is you are just talking about what happened before the time period that you're being asked to analyze. That's it. And it's got to deal with the same subject matter. So if they're talking about American foreign policy in the from 1898 to 1930, like we're going to look at, then you want to talk about foreign policy prior to that. Okay, you don't want to talk about American social construct prior to 1898. You want to talk about foreign policy, things that are affecting that prior to that time period. So, do y'all remember the phrase that you're supposed to use to begin every essay? Prior to blah, 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 blah. You could use prior to 1898. You could use prior to the Progressive Era. You could say prior to World War II, prior to 1990, anything like that. But say prior to, so that way you get in the mindset of analyzing what happened before.
Will Chelsea Salcedo and Shelby Crono please come to the multi-purpose room?
All right, now, you want to have some SFI in the time period before you're being asked to analyze. 1 or 2 pieces of SFI. It doesn't have to get overly complicated here. Okay, just focus on what the question is asking. Try to talk about that topic in a time period before you're being asked to analyze. Then everybody knows what their thesis is. If you don't know a thesis by now, then there's not a whole lot we can do at this point. Okay. Thesis statement. You're answering the question directly. You have to have a claim. You've got to make a claim. If it's talking about the role of America in the world, it's probably going to be asking you, is the United States, is its role in the world increasing? And if so, why? What are the reasons for that? Is it decreasing? If so, why? What are the reasons for that? And which reasons are most important? Okay? That is going to be what you're going to focus on in your thesis. Try not to use SFI in this. Don't use SFI in that. Why?
Because
You can just save it, use it later.
You can't use it in the body. You can, but it won't count towards a point. Okay? So be general with your categories. If you're talking about, say, the impact of the Monroe Doctrine, don't say Monroe Doctrine. Say American foreign policy up to this point had been that the United States would stay out of Europe and Europe would stay out of the Americas.
The more general you are with your thesis,
Be very general with a little bit of specificity, but don't use vocabulary words. Okay? You want to use those in the body paragraphs. Everybody got it? Okay. Evidence. So paragraphs 2 and 3, this is where you're going to analyze the categories that you created in your thesis. And in those categories, you're going to use evidence. And you're going to identify the evidence. Tell me what it is. Tell the reader what the evidence is. And then you're going to explain how it supports whatever your thesis is. Okay? And that's really all you're going to do. You're just supporting your argument in these body paragraphs. Can you have more than 2 and 3 body paragraphs?
Yeah.
Could you have a paragraph 4? Could it be a body paragraph? Yeah. If you've got 3 categories, then you'll have 3 body paragraphs here. And then finally, the last one, your 4th body paragraph will be the counter argument that you identify. Make sure that you see a counter argument, especially when we get the DBQ. Why is it important, especially in the DBQ, to have a counter argument? Okay, it's going to provide for a complexity point in both of them. But what about the DBQ makes it extremely important that you provide a counter argument? Think about what you're having to deal with in DBQ.
Don't you get two sides of the argument?
The documents are going to support different aspects of the argument. And it may be 3 different aspects of the argument. Who knows? But those documents are going to support a thesis, and more than likely, not all of them are going to support one rigid thesis. They're going to support multiple facets. And so you need to be able to see that and to be able to adapt so that you can use those documents in the DBQ when we get to that, okay? All right. Now, let's look at some essays. Okay, we're going to look at the long essay, question 4 from 2021. And then, first let's look at what the College Board said would be acceptable. And then we're going to look at some actual essays that were written. And y'all are going to grade a couple of these. All right, here's the question. Everybody look. Evaluate the extent to which international conflicts in the period from 1898 to 1930 affected the role of the United States in the world. Now, by the way,
It's easy.
I think that's relatively easy, but do you think this one or question 2 would have been easier to answer if you knew the content?
Question 2 would be easier.
I agree, but a lot of kids don't know the content. So make sure you know your content, okay? Because you might get an easier question just as far as what they're asking you to do. Now, this one, evaluate the extent to which international conflicts in the period 1898 to 1930 affected the role of the United States in the world. So, we're talking about the role of the United States in the world. The first thing that you would need to do is to determine whether or not America's role in the world increased or decreased. And by the way, there's some...
That's arguable.
It's absolutely arguable because after World War II, what happens? Or after World War I, what happens?
Well, we're a superpower, but we also back off.
We kind of back off a little. We become a superpower, but now we're backing off. We're disillusioned with the war, and we start focusing on internal issues again, and we kind of take a step off the stage. So the United States, its role in the world is increasing dramatically during this time period. However, after World War I, it kind of diminishes a little bit. You might want to think about some reasons as to why. What would be an example as to how this happened, the diminishing role of America during this time period?
The Depression.
Okay, focus. Well, not yet.
Or like,
What happened at the end of World War II?
The United Nations, or no,
The League of
League of Nations. Did the United States join it?
No.
That would be evidence of the United States kind of stepping off the stage a little bit. Okay, not completely, but a little bit. All right, so then we've got to determine how, whatever your argument is as far as the United States' role in the world during that time period, how much did international conflicts affect it, okay? So be thinking about that. So look, 1898, what is that the beginning of with regards to foreign policy?
Oh.
Does anybody remember? What kind of mood do we find
Is that
ourselves?
feel good?
No,
they want to be secluded.
no, the opposite.
Era.
This is imperialism.
Oh,
This is the beginning of imperialism. And what was that?
like influencing the world.
Yeah, that's where the United States is trying to dominate other powers. What event takes place in 1898?
Do we purchase?
No, there's a war.
Oh, yeah,
We get Puerto Rico, we get Cuba, Spanish-American War. Hey, know your content. Everybody needs to know their content and have an idea of time frames.
Was that Teddy?
Yeah, that's right.
He's not the president yet, but he will be.
Okay.
He will be during this time period. All right, so that is the beginning of imperialism, which shows the United States really taking a step onto the world stage. All right. Now, everybody look. Thesis. Let's look at some theses that would be acceptable and some that would not be acceptable. This is straight from the College Board. All right, Here on this side, you have thesis answers that would not be acceptable. So here we go. The growth of the economy greatly affected the United States' role in the world between 1898 and 1930. It did not focus on the topic of the prompt. Why?
Because it's talking about the economy.
It's talking about the economy. Now, it's talking about how the economy affects our role in the world, which is, that is important. It does, our economy does affect it, but what's the question asking?
It's not about the economy, it's about the role of the, well,
What's it asking?
Global conflict.
It's asking about how global conflicts affected us in regards to our role in the world. All right, the next one. International conflicts affected the role of the United States in the world a lot. What's wrong with that one?
too simple.
Not that it's too simple,
There's
but
no
There's no
specificity.
categories.
there are no categories. It doesn't really, it doesn't provide us with direction. It just says it affected us a lot. Affected us how? Did it make the United States a stronger world power or lesser world power? What happened? I think if they had put something like this, if they had said international conflicts affected the role of the United States by bringing it onto the world stage in a greater role, it did that a lot.
What if they had said international conflicts increase the role of the United
Yes,
States?
yes,
Instead
I
of
think
just
that
saying-
would be acceptable.
Like instead of just saying affected, like
Absolutely.
listing your
But I
arguments.
Yes, correct. All he's saying is that it affected it. He's not saying how it affected it. And the question is saying evaluate how those things affected America's role. So you got to
You
say
have to provide an
how.
argument.
Even if you say initially these conflicts brought the United States onto the world stage dramatically, but then after World War I, the United States kind of took a step back from world affairs or
So
whatever.
it really doesn't matter how specific it is, as long as it goes in a direction.
You've got to go in a direction.
Yeah.
We're going to look at some that are real simple and that get the point here in just a minute. All right, next one. Provided a restatement of the prompt. International conflicts affected the international role of the United States. Okay, again, that's okay if you provide some direction with it. What? Hurry up. That's okay if you provide some direction with it. All right. Let's look at some examples that would get the point. The United States' role in the world was greatly affected. That's important. Hey, use adverbs. Okay? Use adverbs. If you say greatly, that means that you're providing some sort of quantity to how it was impacted, how the United States was impacted. By international conflicts by 1930, as the United States became a world power after the Spanish-American War and a key player in the negotiations to end the First World War. That's pretty good. The next one, fighting in a world war and disagreements about protecting national sovereignty encouraged the United States to avoid a large role in world affairs by 1930. He's arguing the opposite, that the United States was not increasing its role in the world, that it was beginning to take a step back, okay? So there's no right or wrong answer. You just got to give direction and make an argument. And then here's a really simple one. Participation in international conflicts influenced the United States to increase its role in the world. They would get the point.
Even though that's not like optimal.
It's not
It's
perfect.
minimally acceptable.
Correct. It's minimally acceptable, but it gets the point. So what I'm saying is don't do that one. But if you do that, if you just come up, look, let's say, listen to me. Everybody listen. Let's say that they give you a question. They give you 3 questions and you don't have a fat clue how to approach any of them. You don't know what to do, how to prove a thesis or anything. If you can just come up with a sentence like this, that's an argument, and that's the only thing you put, you'll get a point. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you want to do everything you can to get any point. So at least do something like this. Provide a thesis statement, even if you don't even understand what you're talking about. Give a thesis, make an argument. It can be really, really simple and get you the point. Yes, Aiden.
I think I'm gonna struggle with like the SFI. Like I don't remember the names of the. Like,
I know.
Like according to the act of.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, but look, that's why we've gone over that content so much. And look, I've posted 2 videos, okay, that everybody needs to watch. They're content review videos for periods 1 through 5 and then periods 6 through 9. And the 1 through 5 is like 10, 12 minutes long. The 6 through 5 is like 26 minutes long. So you're talking about 40 minutes of watching those two videos, and you get all the content from every time period that you might need to do anything like this, okay? So watch those videos and study your notes. Yes?
Do you think that the first thesis statement that gets the point right there, that they use too much SFI? Because they say world power, Spanish American War,
Yeah.
and First World War.
Well, obviously what they're about to do, if a student has written that, they know a lot of stuff, and they're probably going to have plenty of SFI to go along with it.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm saying to avoid it is so that you don't run out of SFI,
Yeah.
because I got a feeling our SFI will be a little bit limited
Like
because
shallow
it's been
knowledge.
spread over the course of 2 years. You know what I'm saying? So if you do that, just make sure you've got more SFI. What's up?
Ellen, I had a question. How much was each question worth on that test, OT?
Probably just a little over 2 points.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So how does the scoring on the LEQ like scale with the rest of the test?
Like, what's the percentage?
Yeah.
It's going to be 20%. It may be 15.
So,
It's not a huge portion. The multiple choice
For
is
like-
40.
Okay.
Okay, multiple choice is 40. SAQ is 20. What's that? 60. So I think the other two are 20.
so like, if you get a 7 out of 7, do you get like 20?
Well, it'd be 6 for the LEQ. What did I give y'all? Did I give y'all?
You gave it.
I gave y'all DBQ. I'm sorry.
So like, I don't understand. Like, if you like get a 6 out of 6, does that mean you get like a point? Or like, what if you only get like 4 out of 6?
Like, is there a cap?
Like, how do you get the point for that portion
Like,
of
how
the
do you
test?
like on the test?
Yeah, like if you were to get like a 6 out of 6 on the rubric for the LEQ,
Right.
would you get like a point for the whole test?
Yeah,
Or like, what if you only get like 4 out of 6?
I think it's a holistic. We're bringing all of it together. So if it's, let's say this is 20%, and it's out of 5, so yeah, I guess it would be 1 full point. It's not going to be that.
So you're saying it's not like just like math and stats. It's like they take all of it. And
They take it all and bring it
put all in
together,
account.
and yes. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Because really, with the SAQ, you've got 9 total points, but if you don't get them all, you're not going to not get that point. It's going to be averaged in to the whole. It'd be like me giving you a test where you have an essay. We got multiple choice, and we got an essay. If you mess up on the essay and you don't get the full credit, I'm not going to say, oh, well, it was worth 40 points of the test, so you made at most a 60. You see what I'm saying? That's not the way they're doing it. It's all just going to be accumulated together. Yes.
so there are 4 sections of the safety test. Like there's the multiple choice, and then there's short answers, and then there's DBQ and LEQ.
Yes, but really, the DBQ and LEQ are one section together.
Okay. But 2 essays.
Yes. Yes. It's one of the most difficult exams in AP. It just is. And like I was telling the class yesterday, y'all, this is a survey course, okay? That means that you're not focused. Like when I went into my master's or even in my bachelor's degree, when I went into focus on history, done with my basics for 2 years, now I'm in the focus for my degree. I still didn't take tests like this, where I had to write 2 essays in an hour and 40 minutes. Okay? So, but especially when I was doing, US 1 and US 2, just normal classes everybody takes, I never had to do anything like this. So it's really unfair that they put all this on you, but it is what it is. And if you get done, at least you save some money on those courses in college.
Chemistry though, we're all done. There's no point paying.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
chemistry's
That's
gonna be
just a
bad.
free $100.
If I made it,
for that
if I made
grade.
it 2, I might be happy.
Do y'all feel better about this one though?
Oh,
yeah.
they're like,
Okay.
No, I think I have a
better.
chance at like passing this one. I don't think I have a
Okay.
chance at passing the chem.
All right, so let's look at Here's what I want to show y'all. I want to show y'all some of the contextualization points, because I think you get a little overwhelmed in thinking about how you're supposed to write about contextualization, and I don't think it's as daunting a task as you have got it in your head. So let's look at this. Here's contextualization. On the left, these would not get points. The United States economy was roaring in the 1920s. Now that is some context, but it has nothing to do with the question. Okay?
Wait, what was the question?
The question, we're still talking about American.
Oh, okay, from 1898.
Yeah, 1898 to 1930, America's role in the world. Here we go. The 7 Years' War really made Americans mad about taxes. Now, if you were talking about the 7 Years' War, there's an argument to be made that you could connect that to this particular time period, because we're talking about foreign policy. But that's completely inaccurate, and it's just not good.
Really made Americans mad. I feel like that's how they're gonna describe conflicts, like in 100 years, they're like on our history, like everybody was mad all the time.
Yes. All right, now look. Here are some examples of some contextualization that would be, some SFI that you could use in this particular essay. Washington's farewell address, where he warned against entangling alliances. The Monroe Doctrine, we already talked about that a few minutes ago.
Stay out of the Western Hemisphere.
Yes, and we'll stay out of Europe. Manifest destiny, the idea that the United States had a destiny to spread over the North American continent, and you can make an argument that once the North American continent is closed, once they've conquered it all, that manifest destiny notion spreads into imperialism, where the United States wants to become more imperialistic. The progressive movement. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with foreign policy, but you could bring it into this debate in terms of contextualization. I don't want you to do that. I want you to focus on the topic that they're asking you about. So don't bring in, if they're asking you about foreign policy, don't bring in domestic policy unless you can somehow make it connect to the topic that they're asking you about. The Second World War, why would that work here? It's still contextualization.
It's after.
It's after. But listen, if you're trying to provide contextualization for after an event, it's much more difficult than before. It's a lot easier to provide causes that lead to effects than it is effects leading to more effects. Does that make sense? So I would stay away from these things that are after the time period. I would focus on things prior to, and it'll make it easier for you to organize thoughts in your head. Here is a great example of contextualization. Colonial empires grew in the late 1800s as Europeans scrambled to take over territory in Africa and Asia. We've talked about that. Some Americans, hoping to emulate the Europeans and gain international prestige, advocated for an increase in the United States' role in the world. That is contextualization. It's one sentence. I've told you to do 2 to 4 sentences because most of y'all, no offense, most of y'all can't write like that. Okay? Do you agree?
If I ever wrote a sentence like that, you should look at that. You should.
I ain't doing a
If you wrote a sentence like that, I would assume that you got on Google.
Yeah.
Okay?
Like,
So-
if I turned that in, I would expect to you correct that.
Correct.
You would be
I
like, yeah, he didn't
a
write that.
semicolon down.
Yeah, y'all don't even know how to use semicolons.
Dude,
I don't know how to use semicolons.
Semicolons like
Actually, that's just a colon, isn't it?
No, that's a semicolon.
No, semicolons are 2 dots.
A semicolon,
No, a colon is like
it
2 dots.
separates 2 independent clauses.
Thanks a lot, Aiden.
Aiden,
We really appreciate your
No,
participation.
I literally do think I'm looking it up. I'm sorry.
That's a
You
semicolon.
are so wrong.
But do you see how this provides contextualization? And then what would you say right after this? You'd bring
Wait,
in
what
your
did you say
thesis.
that was?
But what's the SF?
That's a semicolon.
The SFI here would be Europeans scrambling to take over territory in Africa and Asia, colonization that was taking place on a world stage. The United States didn't want to fall behind. And then, let's see here. Oh, that's it. You don't have to have more than that. And look, SFI, don't get caught up in just vocabulary words. They can be literal phrases about events that are taking place. That would be SFI because that is what was happening prior to 1898, and the United States felt like they were falling behind.
But that's not even really dealing with the U.S.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
talking about other countries.
Yeah, but look what it says.
Colonial empires grew as
Europeans scrambled to take over territory in Africa and Asia. Some Americans hoping to emulate them and gain international prestige. And I probably would have put, and they were in fear of falling behind in the world. Advocated for increase in the United States' role in the world.
Yeah,
and by the way,
that's just context, yeah.
this is also not a thesis statement. Okay,
Yeah.
it's contextualization.
Wait, so you're saying our introduction could be like 2 sentences?
Yeah. Also, I would start with prior to. So look, what I would say, the first, when you read the question, it says 1898 to 1930. I would say prior to 1898, colonial empires were growing. Europeans were taking over territory in Africa and Asia. The United States was afraid it was falling behind, so they took a stronger role on the world stage.
It's like your trademark, all the AP guys who be reading the essays.
100%. I want them to. I want them to see every one of y'all have prior to begin your essay. It will put you in a mindset, okay, of thinking about what was going on with regards to that topic before the time period you're being asked about. All right, and then for the evidence. So this is stuff that's going to be supporting your thesis statement. In the LEQ, everybody listen. In the LEQ, you need at least 2 pieces of evidence. Okay?
In the whole essay?
At least 2 in the whole essay.
I thought it was good for a paragraph.
No. Now, if you can come up with more, do it. In fact, look, we've talked about this before, and y'all are shocked. Like, let's say that in my first body paragraph, where I'm supporting my argument, I use 2 pieces of evidence. And I explain how they support the thesis, blah, blah, blah. I identify them and explain how they support the thesis. In the next body paragraph, if I don't have a piece of evidence, it doesn't matter, because I've already used 2. They're literally just going to count. 1, 2, done.
So do you even have to write the second body paragraph?
I would. And I would try to bring in as much evidence as I could. I wouldn't limit myself to 2. Why?
Because you might get it wrong.
What if you screw one up and you get it wrong? Plus, you're also trying to get a complexity point later on. And if your essay is really well written and organized and you've got tons of evidence, that is going to contribute to the possibility that you could get that complexity point. The complexity point I always look at as a holistic, where they're reading the essay and they're saying, my God, this person knows the argument, they know the counter argument, they've got tons of evidence for both. They have a complex understanding of this topic. Okay, so yes, it's almost like a bonus point. So here's some examples of evidence that you could use: imperialism, Spanish-American War. Why could the person that we read earlier not use that?
Because
He already used it. The Philippines, Teddy Roosevelt, big stick policy, William Taft, dollar diplomacy. Look, who's dollar diplomacy? That is William Taft. Remember that. Mexican Revolution. We haven't really talked about that. Woodrow Wilson. He believed in moral diplomacy. First World War, Treaty of Versailles, League of Nations, Washington Conference. Don't worry about that. But you see that there are tons of evidence. I mean, this is not all you. I mean, there's all kind of stuff that you.
What's the Washington Conference? I don't remember that.
That is where some of the nation or some of the world's nations met together and nothing was accomplished.
Oh, nice.
I like talking about the League of Nations, how they passed a law banning war. You remember that?
That
War
was
was
good.
now illegal.
That's
But how are you going to enforce it? What if they? Anyway. Example of a statement that earns 1 point for evidence. Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders took San Juan Hill during the Spanish-American War. There's a lot of evidence here. The fact that earns a point is kind of shocking to me, to be honest, because I don't know what argument that's supporting. It's just telling me about an event and the Rough Riders.
Yeah, it's just something that happened.
Yeah, but they say it gets a point. So try to bring in evidence. Look, as a person who has gone to the mock reading many, many times, when we see evidence just randomly listed in the paragraph, we want to try to give them points because they actually brought some evidence. They actually knew some content. Oh my God. So if you can just bring some content, this should show you just having a couple of words will help you to get a point, okay?
Hey, Wiggles, will you read the one that doesn't get the point?
The United States won World War II big time. Well, but he brought in World War II. That's evidence, right?
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
The United States won World War II big time. All right.
And then the ones that get the point are like so freaking huge.
I mean, that has to be right.
I would never write anything that long. Look at that.
All right, let's look at this one.
No. A bunch of it is like explaining.
Right.
Yeah, this is explaining. All right, look. President Roosevelt won the Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating an end to the Russo-Japanese War, which helped the United States gain stature in its role in the world.
That war exists? I never heard of that.
It uses evidence. Yes, you have, dadgummit.
I never heard of that one.
Stop.
Okay.
Yes, you have. Just because you don't remember it doesn't mean you. This guy.
How do you remember that?
Hey, by the way,
I don't know
look.
what that is either.
All right, listen. You need to use this word a lot, or this phrase. Everybody listen. Use this phrase a lot. When you bring in some evidence, use the word which shows, or for this one, which helped, but which shows. You want to bring in evidence. You want to talk about him winning the Nobel Peace Prize to end the Japanese War. This shows that the United States was gaining stature in the world during this time period. Its role was increasing in the world. Okay? This shows. Everybody got it? Use that. When you're using evidence, use the phrase, this shows.
There they are.
Hey guys, come here.
Specimens.
Are we doing? Oh, my bad. Are we doing anything?
Yes.
We definitely.
Yeah, we've been
I
talking
would
about
do
that.
anything.
That was the one where like the Russos fought the Japanese.
All right. The next one. Listen. Shh, focus. Hey, wake her up. If you're gonna sleep, go to the back of the room so I don't have to, so it doesn't get on my nerves as bad. Many Americans were disillusioned by World War I, which led them to be less supportive of a continued international role for the country through the League of Nations. This uses evidence to support an argument that the United States' role was lessened as a result of the First World War. Okay, so many Americans were disillusioned by World War I. Is World War I SFI?
Yes.
You darn right it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't mention it in the question. Okay? Which led them to be less supportive. Look at the word which. You could say, many Americans were disillusioned by World War II. This shows that American support was declining for America's increased role in the world through the League of Nations. Is League of Nations SFI?
Yes.
Yes. Okay? That one had two pieces of evidence.
And these are just parts of a body paragraph?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, with the League of Nations, I would probably have another sentence after this to explain what the League of Nations was and
how the U.S. did.
and how the U.S. didn't join it. Next, the United States enforced the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine to prevent European countries from invading Latin American countries, thus increasing. Who uses that phrase? Thus.
What does that mean?
It means as a result, this increased its control over the Western Hemisphere.
You see the word "thus" in my essay? Just
If I see the word thus in any of y'all's essays, I'm giving it a 0. You cheated.
No.
But
You
you
cheated.
taught us the word, so
I put it in like a.
I've not taught you the
generator.
word. Well, I just did.
Well, we know now.
It's a good point.
Thus leading to.
What else would you use? Therefore, that's the only thing I can think of.
Actually, here's what I would
That's what I was
do.
thinking.
The United States enforced the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine to prevent Europeans from invading Latin American countries. This led to America's increased control over Latin American nations or Western Hemisphere.
So to get a point for SFI, you said you have to state it and then
Wait,
explain
you're supposed to state it. Really.
State it. I would describe what that was, which that's what he does here. The United States enforced the Roosevelt Corollary to prevent European countries from invading Latin American countries, which is what the Roosevelt Corollary was about. And that caused an increase in America's control over the Western Hemisphere.
So we don't actually like have to explain like what it is. We just have to say like how.
That one does. That one does explain
Well,
what it is.
it just kind of like says like how it affected.
No, it doesn't. It says the Roosevelt corollary was to prevent European
Okay.
countries. Okay?
Okay.
It's literally saying what that policy was.
I thought I was saying what it did. It's not.
Here's what you need to do.
Got it.
Give me the piece of evidence. Explain what it is briefly. It doesn't have to get too complicated, and then show how it connects to your thesis. And you're either going to do that by saying this shows, or this resulted in, or something along those lines. But this shows is a great phrase to use when you're using these terms. When you're using SFI, after you've explained what that SFI is, say this shows blah, 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 blah. Okay? Then you're connecting it to your thesis. Have your thesis in mind when you're talking about it. This shows what? What does my thesis say? All right? Okay? Let's see here. All right. For right now, I don't want to talk about this other stuff. Let's go to these essays. Let's look at a couple of examples here. Y'all ready for this? First of all, which essays do you think are going to be longer, the DBQ or the LEQ?
LEQ.
The DBQs.
Why is it called long, man?
Well, the DBQs are longer because you have so many documents that you can use.
I'm just gonna write. Look at the documents.
So the document.
See document 1.
The question has the answer.
What is your opinion on this? See document 1.
This is magnificent.
Dude, this handwriting's awesome.
All right.
Did your bro not have an eraser?
All right, let me say this. Listen. No, you're writing in pen. You'll be writing in pen.
What?
All right, everybody listen.
No.
Listen to me. Shh, listen. The first thing that I want you to notice is, I haven't looked at this one very closely, but make sure that you write legibly. Okay? If you have poor handwriting, first of all, print. Don't write in cursive. If you have poor writing skills, like to where it looks messy, try to go nice and easy in the essay, because I'm going to tell you, they're reading literally thousands of essays in a week. And when they come across one that they can't read, they're going to show it to their partner or the person next to them. Then they're going to show it to the table leader. And if they can't read it, they're going to show it to the overall leader of the thing. And if they can't read it, guess what they do with it?
They throw it away.
0 trash. You may have written the most brilliant piece of literature in American history, but nobody can read it. Okay? So you have to write legibly.
Carter would do that.
That is extremely important. All right.